So how many of you is here for a chatbot talk? Only one person here for chatbot? Everybody else just for fun? I see. Good. If you're here for something else that is not chatbot, then you're in the right room. Yeah, let's clear it out. I am here for fun. That's my main reason, and for some free water. I'll probably need it. Okay, I don't think we'll get more people, so I can probably get started. So my name is Sebastian Vitalec. I work for Progress. I'm a senior developer advocate. And I try to work very closely with our Kinway Chat team. I'm not on the engineering team, but I'm the person that gets very excited about the technology that we create. And I like to go around and share what I learn. If any of you is on Twitter, I'm Seba Wita. I'm like 2 followers away from 3,000. So if you can reach it today, that would be amazing. If not, don't worry. I'll go and buy some 2 followers somewhere later. Anyway, okay. So, I mean, the title is a chatbot crash course, which is not exactly what we advertise, but it's basically this is the idea. I want you to learn a little bit about the challenges that you face when you're building chatbots and sort of like the solutions that we have on our side. So today's agenda is we're going to cover things like what do chatbots eat, answer questions like do chatbots have dreams, why to use chatbots, and we'll look at different challenges that you face with chatbots. And we're going to do, I'm going to actually go and build a chatbot during this session. And I will encourage you to do it at home because it's very safe and there is no danger to you whatsoever if you build a chatbot. So it's a very safe thing to do. And yeah, take pictures, share them on Twitter or through our app. I'll be very happy to see that. And if you have any questions, well, actually TJ is not here, but Bulent is here, like in the back of the room eating cake. So he's on the engineering team. So any in-depth questions, feel free to grab Bulent after. And by the way, we also have a workshop straight after this session. So if you want to learn and build it yourself, hands-on, I'll spend an hour and a half explaining how to do it. And I have, full tutorial on how to do that, okay? So in case if you just walked in, you have a mismatch, I was just explaining the agenda for today or for this session. Okay, so the first question, what do chatbots eat? Any ideas? Anybody? No? Come on, chatbots are created by developers, so without any thinking, chatbots eat pizza. That's what chatbots eat, right? It's pretty obvious. And we're going to go with a theme of pizza as we go. Second question is, do chatbots have dreams? Yes or no? Pizza? Well, yeah, well, chatbots do have dreams, but they don't dream of pizza. They are dreaming of electric ship. Anybody of you seen the Blade Runner? That's what the whole story was based on that book. So yeah, they dream of electric ship. But why to use chatbots? Like I think, and this is kind of like more in like a serious question in this case, and this is basically the voice in the back of your head that's kind of thinking like, why should I even bother, right? And the way I see it is like actually, the communication nowadays of how we interact with each other on a daily basis completely changed. Right? So we used to be more of like face-to-face, you know, let's go and see our friend or let's call each other and everything. But that's very, very different now. Like now, pretty much all of us, like we'll sit next to each other and we're going to text each other. Like, you know, everybody uses WhatsApp, Viber, Signal, like whatever. Like if I show you my phone right now, I have about 15 different messengers. And it's weird because I like to talk to people, but I find it a lot easier to just message somebody, right? So the way we communicate with each other is completely different. And then automatically, if between ourselves, our family, and our friends, if we communicate in a different way, it all does change. So do our customers expect something different, right? Like a lot of customers, like they don't really like to go and call a call center and then wait for half an hour for somebody to answer. What you prefer to do is just drop a message and maybe they can come back to you at the right time. And basically, chatbots can help you with that, right? This is basically the idea. And then, so you can see benefits like improved customer service. You can reduce the common reception calls. Like, so for example, If you have like a chatbot for a hospital, which we actually have one of our case studies, like a lot of people would come and just call and say, hey, I want to see this and this doctor at this hour. Are there any free appointments? Well, you don't really need a person to fix that, right? Like a machine could go look up the schedule and say, yeah, this doctor is available here, let me book it for you, right? So you could easily like reduce all those redundant calls and then hand it over to a chatbot. Again, chatbots are available 24/7, right? You just feed them some pizza, give them some electric sheep, and then we'll keep going, right? Like you don't have to keep them like, pay them like to work on Christmas or whatever, because they don't mind, they're machines. And the chatbots are really great at handling repetitive tasks, right? So like they never get bored. Like if you teach a chatbot to do something, you go for 10 years and happily repeat it over and over again. How many of you would like to repeat the same script for 10 years? Like, any hands? No? I think you're just shy. Come on. And then, in general, speed of communication. So chatbots excel at anything that deals with with data. So if you have to go and say, go and look up like what doctors are available, etc., like chatbots can make those calls to the backend super quickly, find the result, and then respond. While a person, even if he's very experienced, they will usually take half a minute to find the information. Like how many of you actually had a call somewhere and then said like, oh yeah, give me a minute, I'll come back to you. And after 2 minutes, the person from the call center was like, oh, I found this. And I was like, that's not what I want. I was like, okay, give me another 2 minutes, right? Like this is not the case with chatbots. They'll go away for 2 seconds, come back, here is the thing. You say, oh, that's not it. They'll take another 2 seconds, give you the result. And I think this is great. This is really great. And yeah, chatbots are great at accessing data and all types of backends that you would have. But when you want to build a chatbot, like what are the challenges that we usually face? Like there's a lot of assumptions, and if you're not experienced with building chatbots, it's actually very easy to make mistakes. And I've also been looking at like some chatbots that are out there, and I was kind of like seeing what I found difficult, and this is basically like a bit of a summary of the things that I saw. So one of the things, like a lot of chatbots will have fixed decision trees. So they kind of, and what I mean by that is a chatbot will expect you to go in step A, B, C, D, right? Like a chatbot might expect, say, you come in, provide me your name, your email address, your phone number, and what you want to buy. If you start with the email address, the chatbot's like, wait. What is your name first, right? Like, and this is kind of the problem. So if we, and that's basically what I'm saying, is like they try to force you in one way. And this is not very comfortable because this is not how we talk to each other, right? Chatbots should be more like acting as if it was a conversation with another person without pretending to be a human being, right? So a conversation like, I want to book a flight to London for Wednesday. It's like, sure, where do you want to go? And you see, what happens here is like the chatbot, the only thing that they recognize from here is like your intent of going on a holiday, right? But but it was too soon for the chatbot to actually recognize the destination that you want to go to. And you say like, yeah, London, when? It's like, I just told you. So on Wednesday, sorry, didn't get that. I was like, yeah, go at this date. For how many people? So it's kind of, this conversation could be a lot quicker if the chatbot could go like ahead of the game and say like, okay, you already provided me some information, let's go. Another one is around lack of understanding of business entities. So pretty much, what I mean by business entities is anything. If we're dealing with hospitals, a chatbot should be aware of type of treatments, of doctors, nurses, locations. If you do in a shop that, I don't know, sells tools, you should be aware that you're selling screwdrivers and you have different type of tools and maybe different store locations, right? So those entities are the things that you will make part of the conversation, so that when you use natural language processing, the chatbot should be able to recognize, like, oh, you said screwdriver, oh, you probably mean you want a tool, right? That's basically what I mean. So if you have a conversation, again, we in a hospital, and you say, hey, I want to meet with Dr. Burke on Tuesday, and the chatbot's like, well, I'm not sure I understand you, like, because the chatbot doesn't know about the doctors, so you can't really provide you the services. While if we implemented some sort of like an understanding of all the doctors in the hospital, the chatbot, when you say, I want to meet with Dr. Burke, should be able to not only recognize just that the name, but you should be able to automatically go to the backend and then find out there's like all the other information that we have about that doctor, and then that will help us then go and book a proper appointment. And I think this is very, very important. Because at the end of the day, chatbots shouldn't be generic, that they just process your text. Like they should be really aware of what's going on or what entities you're talking about. So yeah, conversation like that, if we go with, I want to meet with Dr. Berg, it's like, sure, I see you want to meet Dr. Berg on Tuesday, etc., etc. So it's automatically not a lot nicer. Lack of proper acknowledgement. This is actually a really, really common one. So it's, if you're talking with another person and you tell them, like, or maybe you call someone and say, hey, I want to order this, this, and that. So you kind of say like, and then usually the other person is like, oh, I understand you want to get this and that. Like if you don't provide this acknowledgement, sometimes the other person might not be exactly sure whether you got the information that you wanted to share. And it's the same thing with chatbots. So if you have, if you start a conversation with something like, hi, I would like to sign up for a health insurance for a ski trip to Italy from March 6th to March 9th. There's a lot of information here, right? So if the chatbot responds straight away with, what is your age? You might be like, oh, did he really understand that I want an insurance that it's for Italy and it's for these 2 dates? Maybe the chatbot got it, maybe not, right? So you will not be very comfortable with this conversation going forward. So if you say like, oh yeah, are you sure you got my info? It's not gonna really fly. Well, if we add proper acknowledgements, this conversation could be a lot better if the chatbot just responds saying, a trip to Italy is always a good idea, right? And then say, let's find an insurance from this date to this date. And at this point, if the chatbot goes and asks you, what's your age, you really feel like you are on the right path to arriving somewhere. Sure, like not having acknowledgement would still work, but you would not be feeling comfortable with this whole thing. And this is also important because sometimes the chatbot might not get what you want. And then in this case, you could actually say like, hey, maybe I misspelled Italy, and maybe I meant something else, right? And that can really, really help you. Dealing with ambiguities. So obviously, what I mean is like, actually English, I always say that it's a very ambiguous language. So like, by the way, I'm Polish, and for Polish is a very precise language. If I say something, there's almost never any misunderstanding because like we construct our sentences very precisely. While if a lot of sentences in English can be interpreted in 2 or 3 different ways. So if people struggle with that, machines can struggle with this too, and it's even harder. So especially with like natural language processing. So if you have a scenario like, we would be fine with this one, but robots can struggle. So you could say something like, I talked to Dr. Burke, and he told me to book an appointment with Dr. Alcott, right? So what can happen here, the child will go like, sure, when would you like to see Dr. Burke? And in this case, the person is like, no, 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 I want to see Dr. Alcott, right? So it's like, which one is it, really? So really a proper way of handling this kind of scenario where a chatbot sees you talking about 2 different doctors, it should give you a warning, right? So again, same sentence, like I talked to Dr. Burke, he told me to see Dr. Alcott. You should kind of go like, hey, I'm a bit confused. Can you please clarify which of those 2 you want to see? And sure, it's like a little extra step, but then at this point, the user can just tap on the doctor they want to see, and they're on a good way to go forward. And I think this is very, very important, because otherwise, it's just going to get very, very messy. No long-term memory. Okay. So again, chatbots are machines, right? There is no excuse for the chatbots to have perfect memory of what happened in the past, right? So if you have a scenario where you, again, want to book an appointment with Dr. Burke on Tuesday at 11, you get a nice response. That's sure, let's book this appointment for you. What is your phone number? So if this is a person that comes for the first time, it's perfectly fine that we're asking this person for a phone number. But if this is the person that books an appointment every week, and every week we ask them for a phone number, that's a bit of a problem, don't you think? Right? So if we ask a person that keeps coming back, it was like, well, don't you have it already? Right? It's like, it's not going to work. So really, a proper way of handling that is remember what people used to choose in the past, especially if it can be reused. So same scenario, wanted that appointment, sure we have that appointment. Is this your phone number? Right? And at this point, If a person wants to give us a new phone number, it's perfectly fine. They can just say no, give it to us, or they can just click yes. And this is good for many reasons. Also, it's very easy sometimes to make a typo, right? If every week you type the phone number, one of the times maybe you get it wrong, and then you don't get that reminder that you were hoping for. By the way, anybody has a guess what this phone number is for? No? That's a phone number to Theresa May, the British Prime Minister. It's a public number, so if you want to give her a call, complain about Brexit, go ahead. I'm kidding. Actually, that is her real number. I Googled it. It's funny. Use of conversation UI, that's another one. So we talk chatbots, and to be honest, like it's easy to think that chatbots should be always only chat, only text. But the reality is, like, as soon as you have a screen, you would be really missing out on an opportunity to actually help the user, guide them like through some choices, especially when you have a big list of options. Like you shouldn't be expecting them to kind of know every single one. So really having options, having conversation UI can help us guide the users on a good path. So in this case, if you have a conversation like, hey, can you book me an appointment with Dr. Burke on Tuesday? Sure, I understand you want to see Dr. Burke. What time? There's nothing, this is perfectly fine, right? You think. Well, and here is the problem. You say, what time? I'll say, well, I want to meet the doctor at 12. Well, sorry, he's busy at 12. What time? Like, how long do you want to go for, right? Until you get the right time. So it's like, this is going to take a while. It's like, sorry, didn't get that. So you see, like, this is a big problem, because if Dr. Burke is very busy, then you'll be really trying for a long time to find the right appointment. So it'll probably be quicker to call a person, and we don't want that. What we want is this. I want to see Dr. Burke on Tuesday. Sure, we can find an appointment with Dr. Burke. He's available at these times, right? And at this moment, you can have a look at it and say, well, I wanted 12, but 11 sounds good too. Or maybe 3 p.m. sounds fine. So you can kind of go and go ahead. So even knowing those challenges, like all of this, like it should be pretty easy, right? Like how to implement that. Not exactly. So like there's different types of chatbots that are out there, and like a lot of them actually maybe they just give you the engine of like maybe processing the natural like the language or so, but you still have to code a lot of those individual features, which is a big challenge. And that's basically where Kinway Chat comes in, because we looked at those challenges and we said we want to be able to tackle all those problems and many others too. So basically. And this is actually also a story that sort of inspired on our side building the Kinway Chat, and what we did, we had one of those big hackathons in Sofia, because that's where like a lot of our engineering happens in Bulgaria, and we wanted to build this scheduling assistant. So like we have a whole bunch of meeting rooms, and we wanted something very basic that would allow you to go and say, okay, I have 5 people. And we need a room with a projector and something, right? And just to book appointments for meetings. And this should be fairly straightforward. But we came up with the whole logic of all the cases and all the possibilities. And this is an actual picture of the design that we came up with. And, you know, it was hackathon, so people were like, sure, I can build that in a day or two. No, they didn't. They failed miserably. It was a disaster, because like there were so many cases. You could change your mind, you could add somebody extra, and sometimes you could go over the limit, so you have to switch, and it was a mess. It was a mess, and that's why we kind of decided that like writing line by line and loads of if statement and switches just doesn't work, doesn't compute, because as the complexity of your scenario grows, the tree of possibilities just grows exponentially. So it's just, this approach wasn't working for us. Okay? So that's kind of the things, like even trying to build a chatbot like that kind of leads to a very limited set of paths and possibilities, because if the whole scenario grows exponentially, eventually you start cutting corners. You're like, okay, I just want to cover these scenarios, and it's not great. It's not great. So we kind of came up as a solution to all that with Progress Kinway Chat, which is like an AI-powered platform. And AI is basically used to train on your data entities and kind of expressions that you use, and makes it for a pretty powerful machine. And the important thing of our approach was that we are using declarative programming. So what I mean by that is you are not writing like a lot of if or switch statements that you keep control exactly what's happening. You just more like train the chatbot in a way where say, in order to achieve this conversation to book an appointment, I need this kind of information. So maybe you need doctor's name, you need time, you need somebody's telephone number. So you instruct chatbot of what are the essential pieces of information in order to achieve the goal, and maybe provide you with some prompts on how to prompt the user. But the chatbot handles this whole conversation, which is very, very important. So I have like a few scenarios of like some of the features that we have. So if you have like an insurance agent application, and this is really cool, you can use the language, the day-to-day language that you use for communicating with the chatbot. And the chatbot is very good at extracting the intent that you're trying to achieve, but also pieces of data. So if you train it, like obviously you can recognize dates, but you can also recognize things like locations maybe, or names of people, or and stuff like that. And you can use up to like 70 different languages, and it works pretty nicely. Acknowledgements is basically something that is built in. So like if you provide a chatbot out of the box with a whole bunch of information, the chatbot can respond as like, oh, you told me you want to go to Italy. I see that. You know, let's get you going, and let's order some pizza. Another one, slot algorithms. So this is part of like the conversation UI where you kind of give options to the user. It's like, what's your gender? Like you can choose male, female, or the list should be a bit longer, but for this demo, 2 is enough. Or you can have like a quick pop-up with available options, so you can choose the country, etc. And this definitely helps a lot, right? Another one, change of intent. This is a pretty huge one, if I'm honest. So you are going through the whole process, and then you realize that actually you provided the wrong dates. And very often, like a lot of chatbots will force you to go all the way back to the beginning, or the step where you are providing the date, and then they'll kind of like make you fill in the same details again. In this case, if we don't invalidate what we chose, it should be pretty straightforward. Just let's go change the date and recalculate how much was the insurance, right? So you don't necessarily have to go through this whole pain and like redoing the whole conversation. And this is basically built in. Like you don't have to make any effort whatsoever in order to change some piece of data in the conversation. Automatic confirmations. So this is actually one of the type of conversation steps in there, where you can basically, after you collected all the pieces of information, you give the user an opportunity to either accept all the pieces of information. I can maybe play it again. Yeah, you have like an option of all the piece of information that the user provided, and they can either press confirm, or they could say, actually, I want a different date or different age. So if you click on one of those items, then the chatbot will like allow you to change it and then come back to the confirmation. And then once you confirm, you'll be able to proceed forward and say, okay, so you gave me all these details, let's perform the booking, which is pretty cool. Conversation UI. So that's basically something we already showed before, but you can have like use different components like a carousel, so you can display to the user the type of information that you want to convey in a nice way. But it's also like a lot easier in this case, because you could provide, maybe for this conference we could have a chatbot that could show different products, and you could say like, I want to see a talk about something, and we could maybe give you a carousel with logos for each product, and then maybe the names of the sessions, and you could just select one and go and see, for example. And that's pretty cool. You also can have frequently asked questions or FAQs. So this is pretty cool, because you could have a database of like one-to-one questions and answers. And the way it works, like you could be in the middle of conversation on how to book an appointment, and then you have a question like, hey, do you cover insurance for Chihuahuas? Is that included, right? And then, so you are allowed to ask the question without interrupting the main conversation, right? So it's very important that you insure your Chihuahua and you want it to be included, right? And once you satisfy, the chat will take you back and say like, okay, Chihuahuas are included because they're, you know, crazy and small. So let's go back and carry on with our conversation. And I think this is really, really cool. And that's the thing, like the chatbots are always focused on the goal, right? So you ask your side question, I gave you the answer, let's come back, right? Let's carry on. And this basically kind of, unless they close the chatbot, it really encourages the user to carry on and complete the task that they got. Like the user doesn't have to ask for it, which is really cool. And providing things like value suggestions. So this is the same thing like I said, if you already gave me your phone number before, your email address before, I'm not going to ask you to type it over and over again. I'm going to ask you, say like, hey, is this your thing? Phone number or email, do you want to change it or do you want to keep it? And that's super easy to do. Is like 2 lines of code, and I'll show you in the demo in a second as well. Image recognition. This one is pretty fun and it's really useful. And I think if you went to the keynote yesterday, TJ was demoing that, I think, or was it Rob? But the idea is like, for example, you need to share an invoice number. We can use a mechanism to see what's on the picture, right? And if somebody gives you a picture of a cat, you could actually say like, even though I enjoy animal pictures, we need a photo of invoice with the billed amount, right? So I think that's very, very important. So we basically use that for the whole Acme application. So if I expected you to give me a picture of the car damage, I can use image recognition to actually see that you send me a picture of a car, right? At least that. So before an actual person has to go and validate that later, at least we can make sure that it's not full of cat pictures or any other weird stuff. Cats are weird, seriously. I don't get cats, seriously. I'm a dog person.
Your presentations for a dog lover, you show a lot of cats.
Yeah, I know. This is not a real cat. It's a machine. It's a chat cat. It's a chat cat.
Do you have a year, for example, if you take a picture of the voice or whatever, and then you can combine it with OCR, so I can identify the number at the end of it, and see the customer number?
We don't have it built in, but I could implement that like in 15 minutes, because what you can do also is you could take a picture and I could send it to an external service, perform the OCR and return the result. So it's not something that's built in, but we could very easily integrate that. It's a good question. Maybe we should implement that.
Yeah, real quick one. Chat single task, like this is an insurance thing, but also they offer auto or home.
You can have multiple different conversations. The thing is, a chatbot will be usually on one specific conversation at a time, but you should be capable of talking about different things. Just like me. Like you come into my session, and this is my session about chatbots, and I'll keep pushing that. But if you came to me yesterday to my session on NativeScript, I'm also capable of talking on NativeScript. It's basically the same thing.
Can we, if you realize that, like me, for example, I'm German, so I've got my difficulties getting out of this conversation, talking English, writing English, then you realize, oh, it's German. I can change the language within the conversation. Is that possible already? Is it something to think about it? Because that's what happens with our customers a lot. We are in real estate business, we have public housing, and well, we don't all the clients, they don't speak German. We have several other languages, and we want them to change. We want to give them good service, but we want them to be able to speak their language in their setup.
So there isn't, okay, so what we would have to do, at the moment we don't have a perfect solution for multi-language support, but what we could do is like have the same conversation like implemented twice, and once we could implement it in German, once in English. And if you start a conversation by, the German,
German, yeah, I'd like to speak German.
You could do that.
Time to change and go to a chatbot.
So I think it's more about like at the beginning, before you begin the conversation, if you, the first thing come to me and you start talking to me in German, like I would respond in German. And then once we start in German, we have to continue in German. So that is possible currently, but changing the language in the middle of the conversation, it would be kind of, it would be hard. But yeah, we could definitely train the chatbots to start either conversing in German or in English, and then kind of have them working side by side. But it's a good question.
One of the things I see here is you'll offer back information about phone number, email address, or something like that. Is there a way to have some information that might be secure that you don't want to provide back because maybe it's your social security number, something like that? You don't. Can you flag a certain type of data that says, well, I'm only going to give them the last four of their number, or the last four of their social, or whatever like that?
Totally. So actually, the way it's done, it's actually the reverse. So we don't by default remember all the options. It's more of like the intention should be on my side as a developer. Okay. So as a developer, I should say, I want to provide suggestions on phone numbers and emails. So the chatbot only then starts paying attention for the future. That's kind of the thing. In terms of
You're saying it only gives it back to the person if they give it to you first.
not only that, but if me as a developer that designs the chatbot, okay, I would have to specify in my workflow that I want to keep an eye on let's say phone numbers and emails, but the social security number I would never store locally. So that could be like my choice. In terms of filtering out, let's say like using like the last 4 digits, that would be a pretty cool feature. I think we could.
Maybe as a service or something.
Yeah. It's not possible at the moment, I think. Yeah, we'll definitely take a note of it. It should be easy to implement as well. So yeah, we'll definitely do that. So I'm gonna jump in the demo, and then we can also have like a small conversation. So this is like the coolest part. So if you're leaving at the wrong moment. Really wrong moment. Because, oops, I'm already breaking my slides. So this is basically the moment of truth. So this what I'm gonna do. Is it really 20 past? What time did I start? Yeah, I will have time. So what I want to do is I will create a brand new chatbot from scratch, right? And I want to show you how easy it is to build a chatbot, right? So imagine we want to create a chatbot for ordering pizzas, right? There's a bunch of developers here. We all want a pizza. So any good name? You can call it Pizza Next, right? So Pizza Next, we're gonna create a chatbot. If you don't see very well, I can make it a little bit bigger, but please come closer. That would definitely help. But I'll show you how this whole thing works. So right now we're just creating an empty chatbot. It's actually not exactly empty. The chatbot already has some code in here, and I would encourage you to come closer if you don't see very well. But right now, with very basic thing, we have this conversation 1, conversation 2 chatbot, and I can straight away press test, which opens this like special console window, and then I can say hi, and the chatbot straight away can respond like, this is a welcome conversation for your chatbot. If you get stuck, you can always press restart. Here's what I can do for you. And he has like this conversation 1, conversation 2. So I can maybe click conversation 2. Let me make it bigger. And then chatbot kind of just responded with, this is conversation 2. Like super, very clever. Whoa. But he also kind of like gives us some understanding of what he understood as we're going. We'll dive into that in a second. So the cool thing is like the conversation 2 is just this little text. You see, this is the JSON that we need to implement that. I'm saying for conversation 2, there is a step that says this is conversation 2. It's like this is the magic, right? But since we're building a chatbot for pizzas, let's create a new conversation, right? So I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna add conversation type goal, and I will call it order pizza. And I'll copy this order pizza. This is gonna be important in a moment because we'll be trying to train the chatbot to know when to trigger this conversation, okay? And my step should be, I'm just gonna do a very simple step of type message, which will basically say, sure, let's get you a pizza. Exclamation mark, that should do it. Let's save that. So now in training, this is where we can train Chatbot to understand when to start this conversation, okay? So I can go to conversations and it already has like when to restart, when to help, etc. So for order pizza, that was our name before, I want it to react when I say I am hungry, right? Or I want a pizza. Get me some developer code. Right? Makes sense. Makes sense. So now I can test, and I can say, me hungry. Let's say this works. It work? No? Oh, maybe too soon. Let's try it, because maybe it was just loading. Be hungry. Nope, too much. Give me pizza. Because sometimes it doesn't have to be exactly even the same. Nope. Let's see. Usually, yeah, we have to be on 70% certainty that some in order to go. Okay, I would just say I want pizza. That should do it. Yeah, sure. Let's get you a pizza, right? So this was fairly straightforward. And so usually with natural language processing, you kind of have to train a chatbot and give him some hints on how to recognize the conversations. And obviously, I could do a little bit better job. But in general, like the chatbots should be very understanding. So, me is hungry. Let's see. Would that work? Nah, I'm too clever. I'm hungry.
Is it confidence level modifiable?
That's no, you can't edit that at the moment. It's set by, yeah, it's something that, yeah, we have built it. So this is just one way. Okay, I talked about creating entities. Okay, so we're gonna take it slightly to the next level. So this is how we recognize conversations. But let's create an entity for a size of a pizza. Okay, so it's gonna be a type keyword. I'm gonna make some static data. Bless you. And what size of pizza do we have? We have small, okay. We have medium, and we have large. And oh yeah, I didn't say medium. Okay, save. Okay, we have those three types. But also, what we could do, add like a synonym. Like small would be 12-inch, medium could be 15-inch, and large could be 18-inch, for example. Right? So you have more than one ways of providing the size that you're interested in. So that's one way. And then in here, even without going and building more on the chatbot, I can have this test console over here as well. So I can say I want a 15-inch pizza, right? And let's see what we get out of here. So you can see the chatbot recognized 15 as a number, but also recognized 15-inch as a size with confidence 1. And then basically it not only knows that it's 15-inch, but its actual value is medium. But also from this, you recognize that this conversation with almost 83%, this is going to be a way to order a pizza, like a conversation to order pizza. I can add another another entity for, let's say, pizza type. And in this case, I'm gonna go and train it and get the data from a backend. So I have my backend over here that has like a list of pizzas, like it has a name, image type, etc. So very quickly, I'm just gonna get the URL. It doesn't have to be Kinvey, by the way. I just use it for the demo because it's easy for me. But I can just copy the URL, which is like this. Okay. So we have URL for headers. We need authorization and the actual authorization key. Let's copy that, paste it here, no spaces. And this will get me whole records. So I have to just use like double carry brackets, and I'm saying for each record, just get me a name property from there. And if I test it, you can see these are the values I'll be getting. So now if I create, basically this created an entity based on that data. So if the pictures, if the pizzas change over time, you can retrain it. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to the conversation flow and then redo this conversation. So I'm gonna get rid of this message. I'm gonna do 2 steps. Step, question. So I wanna get size of the pizza. So how big would you like it? That's 1 step. And what I can do is, for example, say display and of type, and we have quick reply. So we can give some hints to the user. And then another one, I can add like a question, and this one will be pizza. So this is literally name of the variable where I want to remember it, right? And then of type pizza, and I can ask which pizza would you like? And this time I can do this. Oh, I went outside, sorry. And I want to do display type, and there's one single select, which is kind of like a list of items. And then we have like few properties that I can add. So button text. So let's say see what pizzas we have. What else we have here? We don't need those. Template title. Select pizza. I think that should be enough. Let me see if I'm missing anything else. No, that should be it. That's like the bare minimum that we should have. So now, if I test it, I can make it bigger so you can see. So I can say, I want a pizza. We have options, so I can say medium, select pizza. Oh yeah, I got it wrong, like it's the other way around, but I can choose like, for example, my Hawaiian pizza, and then kind of like carry on. And also like as we go, we can see the chatbot understood the size and the type of the pizza we want. Okay, but I can add like some other things like reactions. So reaction is like basically how the chatbot deals with acknowledgements or ambiguities. So acknowledgement could be a text that the chatbot reacts when we give it some data. So say, I see you want it, and then I can say size, right? And then another one is basically suggestions. So I want to show you, do you want it? And then again, I can say size, and I can implement it for each of those. So this is going to be one of the last ones I want to show you. So I can say, I want a small pizza, and the chatbot should be able to recognize the call for small. And you see straight away it goes like, I see you want it small. Okay, let me restart this conversation. I can say, I want a pizza. Come on. And you see, small is the last option, right? If I choose small, choose ultimate cheese, it's fine. You complete the conversation, and now I can say, I want a pizza. This time small will be the first option. Okay, so I can say small, veggie. And this time when I say, I want a pizza, ta-da, do you want it small? Yes or no? And if I say yes, it kind of like carries on and everything. So I can, and the funny thing is that actually, I'm running out of time, but you could very easily then connect it to a webhook. So with like very little code, I could just add something like step, webhook, and I can provide it like the URL where to post my data, and it just saves on my backend. Basically. So let's probably, what we probably should do
I need to do something. Okay. So let's test it with that webhook one more time. And if I order a small pizza and make it veggie, it kind of like went and then perform a webhook. And then in reality, it's like if this was like a real service that we had on the back of the whole session, somebody would probably walk in and order a pizza. Oh yeah, it worked! Hey!
Just sign the receipt later.
Okay, yeah. Just bill it to my boss. So just one slide. You might want to take a picture of this one, and because before I get kicked out. Oops, no. So I wrote a tutorial, and we'll be following it after this session. It's basically that URL. Like in 2 hours, you can learn how to build a chatbot. Oh, Kinvey. Oh yeah, there is a V missing. Hey, nobody's perfect. I can probably update it. Thank you. There you go. Thank you. Save. So yeah, there's a case study of an actual hospital in Bulgaria that's using it, and basically how their appointment is processed by the chatbot, which is pretty cool. You can check out documentation. The playground I was using for building chatbots is basically atbots.kinvey.com. You can get over there. So I'll definitely encourage go and have a look. So yeah, thank you for your time, and hopefully I'll see you all at the workshop in 15 minutes. Oh, yeah.